Yeah, so I actually like to use something called the situational leadership model. So it's based on the model of leadership that's been put in place by a fellow named Ken Blanchard. This was back in the 1980s, but it still holds true.
How are you executing that and helping people on the culture side?
Yeah, I mean that's a really good point that you bring up there, and obviously there's benefits and detractors from being a branded DSO or an invisible DSO, and what I'm actually seeing now is, to your point, a hybrid approach where we're allowing practices to keep their brand name, and that carries a lot of value, and certainly in some cases very strong brand reputation, but we're also incorporating a branded element. So in some cases, it may be a circle or a specific color that's then appended to the existing brand name. So it creates a sense of identity and a sense of belonging to the bigger organization. Now, in terms of this is always a tough one. In terms of
Yeah.
integrating people into the business, we always have to sort of think about what are the seats that we need to be filled, and what are the responsibilities of those particular seats, and what is the core values of the new organization. And what we need to think about is how do these people that we're bringing into the broader business, how do they align with the core values of the broader organization? And can we get them to align? So, are they capable? Do they get it? And do they want it? So that's one of the first things we go through is, I hate to say it, but we sort of judge and we rate these the new people coming in to make sure that they're actually going to be fits within that organization. And when we think about things in terms of performance is really a function of two different things. One, it's either going to be competency, so that's having the skills, the experience needed to effectively accomplish the job, and that can usually be improved by training, improved by education. And then the other side of performance is based on something called commitment. So that's really sort of the level of motivation and the ability to adapt and change to suit a new organization. So there are going to be some people who a little bit more difficult to improve that commitment side of things, to improve motivation. But that's where we sort of begin to look in terms of the situational leadership and the ability to interact and integrate people into a broader organization.
How do you? So I imagine some dentists that come on have metrics to be able to measure some of the things that you just mentioned. But if someone doesn't have those things in place, how would I go about solving for that, especially with a new company who has new leadership? My leadership doesn't know their leadership, right? So there's always that weird thing where it's like, hey, you have my job, I have your job. What's going to happen here? And then you are trying to integrate people in. How do you help them transition in that portion?
Yeah, so I actually like to use something called the situational leadership model. So it's based on the model of leadership that's been put in place by a fellow named Ken Blanchard. This was back in the 1980s, but it still holds true. And it sort of really defines itself by putting the onus of leadership and integration onto the follower, because it says that the most important part of being a leader, and by definition, you can't be a leader if you don't have a follower, is really understanding where the follower is in relation to the specific sort of context in which you're operating. So it sort of groups followers into four categories. One is the the enthusiastic beginner. I always liken it to people learning to drive a car. You're just learning to drive the car. You've no idea what you're doing, but you're really enthusiastic. You're really excited to do it, and you're gonna learn how to do it. And then the next step is in your journey to driving a car. You've backed your car into the mailbox a couple of times. You've got a few love taps from the wall as you've been driving around. So you're a little bit less motivated now. You're a little bit disgruntled, a little bit discouraged. Your skills are improving, but that then requires a different kind of approach to getting the best performance out of somebody. And then the next step is that, hey, you've just passed your exam, your driving test. So you're sort of competent, but you're not maybe confident enough to go out onto the highway by yourself at nighttime. So you're feeling okay skill wise, but maybe not as confident as you could be. And then the next step is that maybe you've been driving for 10, 15 years. So, you're completely competent at what you do. You've got the skills to handle most situations. And you also have the sort of motivation to sort of know that you can't, cross 8 lanes of traffic without putting your indicator on. So you've got a good idea of that.
For all the stateside friends, indicator's a blinker. Just I wanted to translate that for you.
Yes. So, it's really looking at where in one of those 4 categories that a follower lies, and then implementing an appropriate strategy in terms of, is it coaching? Is it sort of a much more hand-holding type of approach? Is it delegation, in order to then integrate them into the appropriate fold?